While Elvis was performing on his own stage, a security guard shouted at him, "Shut up already! Your music is terrible!" At that moment, 15,000 people who witnessed what happened held their breath. Elvis's response to that security guard became music history. On one of the hot summer nights of 1975, an extraordinary evening was about to unfold in the massive concert hall of the International Hotel, considered the heart of Las Vegas. This evening, which was one of Elvis Presley's regular concerts, initially seemed no different from other nights. The hall was packed with Elvis's devoted fans, and everyone had waited days to get tickets to see the king of rock and roll. Under the glittering lights of Vegas, the International Hotel's Grand Hall was completely filled to its 15,000-person capacity. In every corner of the hall, people of different ages and cultures were eagerly waiting for Elvis to take the stage. Elderly couples hoping to hear songs that reminded them of their first love, young girls excited to see their idol, and middle-aged families happy to share a special moment together were all there. The atmosphere in the venue was electric with anticipation. Vendors moved through the aisles selling programs and refreshments, while ushers guided late arrivals to their seats. The air was thick with excitement and the mingled scents of perfume, cigarette smoke, and the faint aroma of the hotel's famous buffet drifting in from the lobby. Conversations buzzed throughout the hall as fans shared stories of previous Elvis concerts they had attended, compared notes about their favorite songs, and speculated about what surprises the king might have in store for them that evening. Behind the stage, Elvis's crew was making final preparations with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Sound technicians were checking microphones and adjusting levels on the massive mixing board, their headphones clamped firmly over their ears as they listened for any potential audio issues. Lighting operators were running through their sequences one final time, ensuring that each spotlight would hit its mark and create the dramatic effects that had become synonymous with an Elvis Presley performance. Musicians were gathered in the backstage area, tuning their instruments and running through last-minute chord progressions. The bass player plucked deep, resonant notes that could be felt through the floor, while the drummer tested his kit with soft taps that gradually built into thunderous rolls. The backup singers, known for their powerful harmonies, were warming up their voices with scales and breathing exercises, their rich tones blending together in perfect preparation for the evening ahead. The costume team bustled around Elvis's dressing room, making final adjustments to the white, jeweled jumpsuit that had become his trademark. The garment was a masterpiece of design and craftsmanship, adorned with intricate beadwork and sequins that caught and reflected light from every angle. Every detail had been carefully planned, from the cut of the fabric to the placement of each decorative element, ensuring that Elvis would command attention from the moment he stepped onto the stage. Makeup artists applied the finishing touches to Elvis's appearance, ensuring that his famous features would be clearly visible even to fans in the furthest reaches of the massive venue. His hair was styled to perfection, every strand in place, creating the iconic look that millions of fans around the world had come to love and recognize instantly. The security team had taken their strategic positions around the hall, their presence both visible and reassuring to the audience, while remaining unobtrusive enough not to detract from the entertainment experience. The International Hotel's security standards were extremely high, reflecting both the venue's prestigious reputation and the need to protect one of the world's most famous entertainers. Special precautions were always taken to ensure that no incidents occurred during Elvis's concerts, as his performances often generated intense emotional responses from fans. Leading the security team on duty that night was a man named Tom Bradley, approximately 45 years old, with a former military background that showed in his straight posture and no-nonsense demeanor. His stern temperament and rigid adherence to protocol had served him well in his previous military career and continued to define his approach to civilian security work. Bradley wore his uniform with pride, every button polished and every crease sharp, projecting an image of authority and competence.
However, Bradley had been working in security in Vegas for many years, while maintaining a quite distant and even negative attitude toward the music world, and especially Elvis's popularity. In his opinion, Elvis was just someone who made noise, unnecessarily excited people, and performed far from what he considered real music. Bradley's understanding of music was rooted in more traditional genres, classical compositions, military marches, and the folk songs of his youth. He never understood the appeal of rock music, especially Elvis's style, which he viewed as loud, chaotic, and lacking in artistic merit. To Bradley, the screaming fans and wild enthusiasm that surrounded Elvis concerts represented everything that was wrong with modern entertainment. He couldn't comprehend why thousands of people would pay good money to listen to what he considered glorified noise, or why they would react so emotionally to a performer who, in his view, simply gyrated on stage and sang into a microphone. The whole phenomenon struck him as a waste of time and energy, a distraction from more serious and worthwhile pursuits. At exactly 9 o'clock, as the hall's lights slowly dimmed according to carefully orchestrated timing, the crowd began applauding in wild excitement that built like a tidal wave of sound. The anticipation that had been building throughout the evening reached a crescendo as thousands of voices joined together in cheers and calls for their beloved king. When the stage lights blazed to life in a dramatic burst of illumination, Elvis appeared through the stage entrance in that evening's mesmerizing white costume, and the audience erupted in a deafening roar of approval. His gold-embroidered jumpsuit sparkled under the intense stage lights like a constellation of stars, and with his unique charisma that had captivated millions around the world, he enchanted the entire hall from his first moment on stage. His hair was perfectly styled in his signature look, and he wore that famous smile that had graced countless magazine covers and movie screens. Every movement was calculated, yet appeared effortless. Every gesture designed to connect with his audience while maintaining the mystique that made him a global icon. "Good evening, Las Vegas," Elvis called out, his distinctive voice reaching every corner of the vast hall with crystal clarity thanks to the sophisticated sound system. The crowd responded with screams and shouts that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Some women burst into tears of joy at seeing their idol in person, while men stood applauding with enthusiasm that matched their female counterparts. Elvis had immediately commanded the stage, drawing the entire hall to himself with the magnetic energy that had made him the most famous entertainer in the world. He began the concert with his opening song, his movements fluid and confident as he took control of the stage. With his guitar positioned perfectly in his hands, moving around the performance area in his well-known style that had influenced countless other performers, he was practically dancing while singing each note with the precision and power that had made him famous. His voice filled the hall with rich, warm tones that seemed to wrap around each listener individually, creating an intimate connection despite the massive size of the venue. The musicians behind him played with the tight coordination that came from years of performing together, each instrument contributing to a wall of sound that supported Elvis's vocals while never overwhelming them. The bass lines provided a solid foundation, the drums drove the rhythm forward with irresistible energy, and the guitars added layers of melody and harmony that created the full, rich sound that audiences expected from an Elvis Presley concert. The backing singers, positioned strategically on stage to provide both visual and audio balance, added their voices in perfect harmony, their contributions enhancing Elvis's performance while showcasing their own considerable talents. Their choreographed movements complemented Elvis's style while maintaining their own distinct presence, creating a unified yet dynamic visual presentation that kept the audience engaged from every angle. However, Tom Bradley stood at the edge of the hall, his arms crossed and his face set in a disapproving expression as he watched this spectacle unfold before him. To his mind, Elvis's stage performance was excessively loud and overly theatrical, a display of showmanship that prioritized flash over substance. He couldn't understand why people responded so enthusiastically to what he saw as an artificial and manufactured entertainment experience. The audience's reaction particularly troubled Bradley, as he viewed their emotional responses as potentially problematic from a security standpoint. The screaming, the jumping, the reaching toward the stage, all of these behaviors represented potential safety hazards in his professional opinion. He found himself constantly scanning the crowd for signs of trouble, expecting at any moment that the excitement might boil over into something more dangerous and uncontrollable. As Elvis moved into his second song, the audience settled into a rhythm of response that showed their familiarity with his performance style. They knew when to cheer, when to sing along, and when to simply listen in rapt attention. This practiced engagement between performer and audience was part of what made Elvis concerts special experiences, but Bradley saw it only as mob behavior that needed to be monitored and controlled. As the concert progressed through its carefully planned set list, Elvis became increasingly energetic, feeding off the enthusiasm of his audience in the symbiotic relationship that defined his live performances. During his more upbeat numbers, he moved across the stage with the athletic grace that had become his trademark, covering every inch of the performance space to ensure that fans in all sections of the venue felt included in the experience. His interaction with the microphone was masterful, treating it as both a musical instrument and a means of intimate communication with his audience. He would pull it close for tender moments, extend it outward during powerful crescendos, and use it as a prop during his more theatrical numbers. Every gesture was purposeful, every movement designed to enhance both the musical and visual aspects of his performance. The crowd responded to Elvis's energy with increasing enthusiasm of their own, creating a feedback loop of excitement that elevated the entire experience beyond mere entertainment into something approaching a religious or spiritual event for many attendees. Some fans stood and danced in their seats, moving to rhythms that seemed to pulse through the entire venue, while others sang along with voices that blended into a massive choir supporting their idol. The lighting design played a crucial role in creating the magical atmosphere that surrounded Elvis concerts. Spotlights followed his movements across the stage, creating dramatic silhouettes and highlighting the intricate details of his costume. Color washes bathed the entire venue in hues that complemented the mood of each song, while special effects created moments of pure theatrical magic that enhanced the musical experience without overwhelming it. Tom Bradley, however, found his irritation growing with each passing song. From his position at the side of the hall, he watched what he considered to be an increasingly chaotic scene unfold before him. The music seemed to grow louder with each number, the audience more animated, and Elvis more theatrical in his presentation. To Bradley's rigid sensibilities, the entire event was spinning further and further away from what he considered appropriate public entertainment. In Bradley's view, concerts should be dignified affairs where audiences sat quietly and appreciated the music in a controlled, respectful manner. The idea that entertainment could be participatory, that audiences could become part of the performance itself, was foreign to his understanding of how such events should be conducted. He saw the enthusiasm of Elvis's fans not as genuine appreciation for artistry, but as misguided hysteria that reflected poorly on their character and judgment. As Elvis transitioned into one of his signature ballads, the entire atmosphere of the venue shifted subtly but dramatically. The frenetic energy of the rock numbers gave way to something more intimate and emotional, as thousands of individual voices joined together in a collective experience of musical beauty. This was Elvis at his most powerful, not as a gyrating performer or a rock and roll rebel, but as a vocalist capable of touching the deepest emotions of his listeners. The song showcased Elvis's remarkable vocal range and his ability to convey complex emotions through subtle changes in tone, phrasing, and dynamics. His voice filled the hall with warmth and sincerity, creating moments of profound connection between performer and audience that transcended the commercial aspects of the entertainment industry. For many in attendance, these musical moments represented some of the most meaningful experiences of their lives. Elvis moved across the stage with slower, more deliberate gestures during the ballad, his body language conveying the emotional weight of the lyrics without melodrama or artifice. His connection with the song was clearly genuine, and this authenticity communicated itself to his audience, creating the kind of shared emotional experience that separated truly great performers from mere entertainers. The audience responded to this shift in mood with their own transition from wild enthusiasm to reverent attention. Conversations ceased, movement stilled, and thousands of people focused their complete attention on the man at the center of the stage. Some couples in the audience moved closer together, using the romantic atmosphere created by Elvis's performance to enhance their own intimate connections. But Bradley's frustration continued to mount as he watched what he perceived as an overly sentimental and manipulative performance designed to extract emotional responses from an audience that seemed all too willing to be manipulated. He couldn't understand why people would allow themselves to be so affected by what he saw as artificial emotion manufactured for commercial purposes. The tension that had been building in Bradley throughout the evening was approaching its breaking point as Elvis continued his performance with increasing confidence and connection to his audience. From Bradley's perspective, the situation was becoming more problematic with each passing moment, as the crowd's responses grew more animated and the music seemed to grow louder and more intrusive. Bradley's military background had taught him to value order, discipline, and control above all else. The spontaneous and emotional nature of Elvis's concert represented everything that his training had taught him to distrust and suppress. In his worldview, public gatherings should be orderly affairs where everyone knew their role and stayed within clearly defined boundaries. As Elvis began another song, moving across the stage with the fluid confidence that had made him famous, Bradley made a decision that would change the course of the evening in ways that no one could have anticipated. His sense of duty, combined with his personal distaste for what he was witnessing, finally overcame his professional restraint. Despite warning looks from his fellow security officers, who recognized the dangerous territory Bradley was entering, he began moving toward the stage with determined steps. His colleagues tried to signal him to stop, understanding that interfering with Elvis's performance would create exactly the kind of disruption they were all employed to prevent. But Bradley was beyond reasoning at this point. The audience members near the stage initially assumed that Bradley's approach was part of some planned security protocol, perhaps related to a specific threat that had been identified in the crowd. However, his aggressive body language and grim facial expressions suggested that this was not a routine security matter, but something far more serious and potentially explosive. As Bradley reached the edge of the stage, Elvis was completely absorbed in his performance, unaware of the approaching confrontation. He continued singing while moving across the stage, his attention focused entirely on connecting with his audience and delivering the kind of performance that had made him a legend. The musicians behind him continued playing, equally unaware of the brewing crisis that was about to erupt at the front of the stage. Bradley hesitated for just a moment at the edge of the stage, perhaps finally realizing the magnitude of what he was about to do. But his anger and frustration had built to a point where rational thought was no longer possible, and he hauled himself up onto the stage with movements that betrayed his military training and physical conditioning. The stage crew members who witnessed Bradley's unauthorized entrance were frozen with shock and uncertainty. They had procedures for dealing with various types of emergencies, but a security guard attacking the performer was not a scenario that anyone had anticipated or prepared for. Their hesitation in those crucial seconds allowed Bradley to advance further onto the stage before anyone could intervene. Elvis noticed the disturbance as Bradley approached, and he paused in his singing, lowering his microphone slightly as he tried to understand what was happening. His expression showed confusion rather than alarm, as he initially assumed that Bradley was bringing him some important information about a security concern that required his immediate attention. "Is there a problem?" Elvis asked, his voice carrying through the sound system to the entire audience. The question was delivered in his characteristic polite and professional manner, showing no sign of defensiveness or aggression despite the unusual nature of the interruption. The audience began to quiet down as they sensed that something unplanned was occurring on stage. The change in atmosphere was palpable as thousands of people shifted their attention from enjoying the music to trying to understand what was happening between Elvis and the security guard who had so dramatically interrupted the performance. It was at this moment that Bradley's composure finally cracked completely. All of his frustration, prejudice, and anger boiled over in a verbal explosion that shocked everyone within hearing distance and would be remembered for decades to come. Bradley, his face red with anger and his voice shaking with emotion, stepped closer to Elvis and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Shut up already! Your music is terrible!" The words echoed through the sound system, amplified by the sensitive microphones that were positioned around the stage, ensuring that every person in the massive venue heard the shocking outburst with crystal clarity. The effect on the audience was immediate and dramatic. 15,000 people who had been enjoying themselves just moments before were suddenly plunged into stunned silence. The transition from musical celebration to shocked bewilderment happened so quickly that many audience members needed several seconds to process what they had just witnessed. Some fans gasped audibly, their hands flying to their mouths in disbelief. Others sat frozen in their seats, unable to comprehend that someone would dare to speak to Elvis in such a disrespectful manner, especially during his own concert. The silence that followed Bradley's outburst was so complete that the normal ambient sounds of a large venue, air conditioning, distant traffic, the hum of electrical equipment, suddenly became noticeable. Elvis himself stood motionless for a moment, his microphone still in his hand, but hanging loosely at his side. His expression showed genuine shock, not at being challenged or criticized, but at the sheer inappropriateness and unprofessionalism of Bradley's behavior. In all his years of performing, through countless concerts and countless interactions with difficult people, he had never experienced anything quite like this public confrontation. The musicians on stage stopped playing almost in unison, their instruments falling silent as they turned to stare at the unbelievable scene unfolding before them. The backing singers stood with their mouths open, their trained voices rendered speechless by the magnitude of Bradley's breach of protocol and common decency. In the audience, emotional reactions varied widely. Some fans began to show signs of anger at Bradley's disrespect toward their beloved idol, while others seemed more concerned about how Elvis would respond to such an unprecedented attack. Many appeared to be holding their breath, waiting to see whether this shocking moment would escalate into something even more dramatic and potentially dangerous. The technical crew, watching from the wings and control booths, were equally stunned. Some reached for their headsets, ready to call for additional security if the situation deteriorated further, while others began adjusting their equipment to ensure that whatever happened next would be clearly documented for posterity. Bradley himself seemed surprised by the intensity of his own outburst, but rather than backing down or apologizing, he stood his ground with the rigid posture that reflected his military background. His face remained flushed with anger, and his eyes held a challenging glare that suggested he was prepared to defend his actions regardless of the consequences. The seconds that followed Bradley's shocking outburst stretched like hours, as 15,000 people waited to see how the king of rock and roll would respond to such an unprecedented public insult. The silence in the vast venue was so complete that it seemed to have weight and substance, pressing down on everyone present with the gravity of the moment. Elvis stood perfectly still for what felt like an eternity, his gaze fixed on Bradley with an expression that was difficult to read. Those who knew him well might have recognized the signs of deep thought behind his famous blue eyes, as he processed not just what had happened, but how he wanted to respond to this crisis that had erupted in the middle of his own concert. When Elvis finally moved, it was with the calm deliberation that had characterized his approach to difficult situations throughout his career. He slowly raised the microphone to his lips, his movements unhurried and purposeful, suggesting that whatever he was about to say had been carefully considered rather than born of immediate emotional reaction. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis began, his voice carrying the same warm tone that had charmed millions of fans around the world, "I'd like you to meet Tom Bradley. He's responsible for our security here tonight." His words carried clearly throughout the venue, and the audience listened with rapt attention, sensing that they were witnessing something extraordinary unfold before them. Elvis paused for a moment, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. His body language remained relaxed and non-threatening, showing no signs of the anger or defensiveness that many people might have displayed in similar circumstances. Instead, he projected the kind of calm authority that comes from years of dealing with difficult situations and difficult people. "Tom," Elvis said, turning to face Bradley directly while maintaining the warm tone in his voice, "I understand that you don't enjoy my music, and that's perfectly okay. Everyone has different tastes, and that's what makes the world interesting." His words were delivered without sarcasm or condescension, showing genuine respect for Bradley's right to his opinion even in the face of such disrespectful behavior. The audience began to respond with scattered applause, recognizing the grace and maturity that Elvis was displaying in the face of such an unprecedented challenge to his authority and dignity. Some fans were clearly moved by their idol's ability to maintain his composure and treat his attacker with kindness rather than retaliation. Elvis continued, his voice growing slightly stronger as he warmed to his theme. "But there are 15,000 people here tonight who do enjoy this music. They've paid their hard-earned money to be here, they've taken time out of their busy lives, and they deserve to have a good time without being told that their preferences are wrong." The applause grew louder and more sustained as the audience recognized the wisdom and fairness of Elvis's response. Many fans were clearly impressed by their idol's ability to defend their rights and preferences while still maintaining respect for the man who had attacked him so publicly and inappropriately. "Now, Tom," Elvis said, his tone becoming more personal and direct, "I'm going to give you a choice. You can stay here and try to enjoy the rest of the show with us, or you can leave if you prefer, but if you decide to stay, I need you to show respect for these good people who just want to have a pleasant evening." The offer was delivered with such sincerity and genuine kindness that even Bradley seemed taken aback by the unexpected response. He had clearly expected anger, retaliation, or at least defensive hostility, but Elvis's calm and measured response had completely diffused the confrontational energy that Bradley had brought to the stage. Bradley stood frozen for several long moments, his aggressive posture gradually softening as the full impact of Elvis's gracious response began to penetrate his anger and prejudice. The man who had stormed onto the stage with military precision and righteous indignation now found himself facing a situation that his training and experience had not prepared him to handle. The unexpected kindness and respect that Elvis had shown him, even in the face of such public disrespect, began to crack the armor of preconceptions and biases that Bradley had built up over years of dismissing Elvis and his music as worthless entertainment for simple-minded people. For the first time, he was seeing Elvis not as a caricature or a symbol of everything he disliked about modern culture, but as a real person with genuine grace and dignity. I apologize, Mr. Presley," Bradley said, his voice much quieter now and lacking the aggressive edge that had characterized his earlier outburst. The words were picked up by the sensitive stage microphones and carried throughout the venue, allowing everyone present to witness this moment of unexpected humility from the man who had seemed so certain of his righteousness just moments before. The audience responded to Bradley's apology with a mixture of surprise and approval. Many fans had been prepared to see their idol defend himself more aggressively, and Elvis's gracious handling of the situation had elevated their respect for him to even greater heights. The fact that his approach had actually worked, producing a genuine apology from his attacker, only reinforced their admiration for his character and wisdom. Elvis moved closer to Bradley, and in a gesture that surprised everyone watching, he placed his hand gently on the security guard's shoulder. The physical contact was brief but meaningful, conveying forgiveness and acceptance without the need for additional words. It was a moment of human connection that transcended the artificial boundaries between performer and security personnel, star and employee. "Tom, we all make mistakes sometimes," Elvis said, his voice warm with genuine understanding. "What matters is that we learn from them and try to do better." He then turned to address the audience directly, his showman's instincts helping him to manage the emotional energy in the room and guide everyone toward a positive resolution. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've all learned something tonight about the importance of treating each other with respect, even when we disagree about things." The audience responded with enthusiastic applause, clearly moved by the lesson in human decency that they had just witnessed unfold before them. Elvis then made a decision that surprised everyone, including Bradley himself. He extended the microphone toward the security guard, offering him the opportunity to address the audience directly. "Tom, would you like to share a few words with these good people?" Bradley hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the spotlight, but recognizing the generosity of Elvis's gesture. He had been given an opportunity to redeem himself publicly, to transform his moment of shame into something more positive and constructive. After a few seconds of internal struggle, he accepted the microphone with hands that trembled slightly. Bradley began, his voice uncertain and shaky. "I've been working security for many years, and I thought I understood what entertainment should be. But tonight, seeing how Mr. Presley handled my inexcusable behavior, I realized that maybe I've been wrong about a lot of things." His words carried the weight of genuine emotion and self-reflection, and the audience responded with respectful attention rather than mockery or anger. Many people in the venue recognized the courage it took for Bradley to admit his mistakes so publicly, and they appreciated the growth and humility he was displaying. Elvis reclaimed the microphone with a smile that showed no trace of resentment or anger toward Bradley, demonstrating once again the remarkable capacity for forgiveness that had endeared him to millions of fans around the world. "Tom, music isn't just about sound," he said, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had spent his entire adult life thinking deeply about the power and purpose of musical expression. "It's about bringing people together, sharing emotions, and creating moments that we'll remember for the rest of our lives." The audience listened with rapt attention as Elvis articulated something that many of them felt but had never been able to express so clearly. His words gave voice to the reason why they had traveled from far and wide to attend his concert, why they had saved money for tickets, and why they felt such a deep connection to his music and his performances. "Tonight, you've become part of our family, Tom," Elvis continued, his gesture inclusive and welcoming. "And I hope that maybe you'll stay and see what we're really all about." The invitation was extended with such genuine warmth that Bradley nodded almost without thinking, clearly moved by the acceptance he was being offered despite his earlier behavior. Elvis turned to his musicians, who had been watching this extraordinary exchange with amazement and professional admiration for their leader's handling of such a difficult situation. "Gentlemen, what do you say we play something special for our new friend Tom?" The band members nodded eagerly, clearly excited to be part of this unique moment in concert history. Bradley moved to the side of the stage, no longer with the aggressive posture of an intruder, but with the uncertain steps of someone who was experiencing a fundamental shift in his understanding of the world around him. For the first time in his life, he was seeing Elvis's concert not as a security professional looking for problems, but as a human being open to new experiences. As Elvis began his next song, the entire atmosphere of the venue had been transformed by the extraordinary events that had just unfolded. What had started as a potential disaster had become something beautiful and meaningful, a demonstration of the power of grace, forgiveness, and human connection to transform even the most difficult situations. The music that followed seemed to carry additional emotional weight and significance, as both performer and audience were united in having witnessed something truly special together. Elvis's voice carried new depth and passion, as if the confrontation and resolution with Bradley had reminded him of why he had chosen music as his life's work in the first place. Bradley found himself listening to the music with ears that had been opened by his experience of Elvis's character and humanity. For the first time, he was hearing not just the sounds and rhythms that had always annoyed him, but the emotions and stories that Elvis was conveying through his performance. The transformation was gradual but undeniable, as years of prejudice and preconception began to give way to genuine understanding and appreciation. The audience, too, was experiencing the music differently, knowing that they had been part of something unprecedented and meaningful. The shared experience of witnessing Elvis's gracious handling of the crisis had created a bond among all present that went beyond the typical relationship between performer and audience. As the concert continued, it became clear that the confrontation with Bradley had not damaged the evening, but had actually enhanced it in ways that no one could have anticipated. The music seemed more powerful, the connections more meaningful, and the sense of community in the venue more profound than in any ordinary concert setting. Bradley remained at the side of the stage throughout the rest of the performance, his transformation from antagonist to appreciative observer serving as a living reminder of the power of music and human kindness to change hearts and minds. His presence added an element of redemption and hope to the evening that touched everyone who witnessed it. For Elvis, the incident became one of the defining moments of his career, not because of the challenge he faced, but because of the grace with which he met that challenge. His response to Bradley's attack became a story that would be told and retold for decades, inspiring countless people with its demonstration of the power of love to overcome hatred, understanding to triumph over prejudice, and forgiveness to heal division. The concert concluded with Elvis and Bradley sharing a moment of mutual respect that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. Their handshake at the end of the evening symbolized not just personal reconciliation, but the broader possibility for people to overcome their differences through openness, empathy, and genuine human connection. This extraordinary night in Las Vegas became more than just another Elvis concert. It became a testament to the transformative power of music and the importance of treating all people with dignity and respect, regardless of their opinions or backgrounds. The lesson learned that evening, that grace and understanding can triumph over conflict and prejudice, continued to resonate with everyone who was present and with countless others who heard the story in the years that followed.